Hi, everybody. My name is Matt Guarini, and I am the Executive Director of the TBM Council. We're here with Howard Rubin for the second podcast for the real ROI of tech. We explore how to get the most value for your business from your technology investments on this podcast. Joining me is Howard. Howard, would you like to say hello?
Yeah, hello everyone. And I think many of you are familiar with my work in technology economics, both as a professor and a practitioner. And I'm proud to be helping out the TBM Council today.
And we're proud to be working with you, Howard, because as everybody knows, or if you don't know, Howard is the source for data and insights on how people are spending money for technology and how they're getting value out of that. On our first podcast, we just talked about the concepts around return on investment from technology. On this one, we want to deconstruct a little bit to really understand what we mean by ROI. And so, Howard, the first thing I'd like to start is give us your view of ROI and the importance of it as a metric for people in technology.
Yeah, and we could talk about it as ROIT, the return on investment in information technology, just to make sure that we're talking about. But actually, that matches the return on investment of business. If you look at even the classic, as impressive, the classic textbooks on business competition. There's a book by Tracy and Wersmer on disciplines of market leaders. I mean, how do companies compete? At the high level, they compete on operational efficiency and effectiveness. So how do you measure that? Margin and stuff helps like that. Effectiveness means getting things out the door. There's also the whole aspect of the customer. So another aspect of what you're doing with technology and what the return on investment is, it has to do with how you interact with your customer. And there's a concept called customer primacy with the products you have, that you're number one in the marketplace. And number three, as you go down the stack, I mean, nothing in any business is stagnant. There's always new products, and it's getting new products to market. So it's product delivery. And then, which comes in the news every day, the things that seem to be less tangible but equally important. There's the risk profile of the company in cybersecurity, the things like being able to attract and retain talent, and there's reputational issues and a whole bunch of stuff. So ROI really has to do with things that you can measure, which are quite tangible in the context of your business and the business strategy, and things that seem intangible that are equally important. And you start to see all of this in the TBM models and structures you have that evolved from the Atom model to what you have today. And, I don't know if Matt is going to put up a picture, but the top line of that has to do with the elements of value, which can show up in revenue and profitability and product leadership and that promoter score and product to market. So there's no shortage of things to measure. What there's a shortage is of people who are connecting the dots between what they do and where this stuff shows up and when, and understanding the probability of those things happening, and more important, the timing of those things. And that's what's screwing up the whole AI stuff. Because when you wave your hand and say, I'm using AI, the benefits don't appear tomorrow, folks. There's a lot to do.
So to that point, when you look at the TBM framework, we identify six different sources of value for the business. As you said, Howard, some of them are financial, some of them are operational efficiency. We see things around risk and compliance, which you
Yeah.
mentioned. Innovation is another.
Yeah.
Customer experience is one.
Yeah.
More and more important all the time. Sometimes people, kind of let that one slide by. But the more you think about if you deliver, and this is data from Forrester, those companies that deliver great experiences are the ones that typically get the most value out of
Yeah.
their investments. And then the last one that we typically look at is sustainability, and that's taking a little bit of a back seat, but you're hearing a lot of it still on the data center side and things like that. So we do get to that, but now when we look at that, that's kind of the numerator, the value that we get out, but the denominator is all the cost that we're delivering on. And so when you look at those costs, we talk about IT costs, but not all IT sits within the IT budget, right, Howard?
Correct. Yep. And one of the things we look at when I do the analyses for companies, we look at total technology expense, which means you don't look at the central IT budget, because there's a good portion of companies which have distributed IT. So it's to find every technology dollar and account for it wherever it is in the organization. So we have central IT stuff, we have business unit IT, we even have a category uh, that was a shadow IT. It's even like cloud is being used by a marketing department, or they're using separate AI tools that are in their budget. That's what a shadow IT. It doesn't look like
Mhm.
IT to everybody centrally, but it's there. And actually, if you extend all that out, and this is, the professorial side of me in research, we extended that out to process control and everything else. So there's total sort of IT expense information technology, no, but there's also the bigger, massive total technology expense. And companies need to actually, world isn't ready for it because the accounting isn't there, but are ready to start measuring total technology expense. And the last sort of part of my sermon will be, I view the CIO as the company's chief technology economist, because how do you look and balance all this stuff? And as Matt just said, you're spending money to keep your lights on and run the business. You're spending money for investment. So the top line number doesn't matter unless you know where the hell the money is going. And if you're efficient or not at both of those pieces, that's, people call it run versus change. I invested that technology. It was one of my greatest crimes versus mankind, because everybody, person kind, I should say, because people will put whatever they want into those buckets and they try to compare, and it has no meaning unless you get granular.
So let's a part of that that I want to kind of go dive a little deeper on is this is, we're now thinking of, or not thinking of, but we're all seeing all this AI impacts. And at a recent board meeting, one of our TBM Council board members said to me that, you know almost all the value you're going to get sits at the enterprise level. And then another one quickly chirped in and said, and a lot of the cost that you're going to affect sits at the enterprise level. So that ability to just look beyond the IT budget when you're thinking about AI becomes really critical. And this is where, FinOps is a wonderful framework, but the average company is about 15% in the cloud.
Yeah.
And even from an AI perspective, more than half of your cost of your AI implementations are outside of public cloud. And I think that's only going to go in a direction more to on-prem when you look at things with AI sovereignty, data sovereignty. So the question I would have to you here, Howard, is um, what is the criticality of being able to look just beyond IT? I know you want to get there first, but if you're going to do AI right, how important is it that you can look more across the enterprise and have that wider perspective?
Yeah, I think that's the piece that's absolutely critical when we talk about looking at the outcomes. So to really understand what's going on, you have to connect to the enterprise key measures, what the enterprise is doing, and connect the dots on both sides of that equation, and manage your projects toward the outcomes, not the technology cost side alone, but clearly understand on your cost side, and there are all sorts of relationships there. I'm using this run the business, change the business model just because, it's sort of expressive in a simple form. It doesn't talk about where the change is. Change could be, like you said, it could be impacting revenue, it can be impacting operating costs, it could be impacting, customer experience and stuff like
Mhm.
that. So you need granularity in that. But you need granularity on the other side, which is running the business, which is keeping the lights on. It may be everything tied up in your software licenses over time that don't allow you to make any changes quickly with termination clauses and stuff like that. And you have all the regulatory and cyber stuff. So is that change or does that keep the lights on? You got to get that straight. So those are a couple of the big pieces that are in there that I think have to be considered. But the other piece that people don't consider, or firms don't consider, is when you build something new and you put it in production, well, I've just invested, I got it. But what does that trickle down to? It's trickle down economics, because when it's an operation, it flows back in to run the business. So basically, companies need to build total technology economic models. And although this will sound like an infomercial, and that's one of the things that we partner with TBM on, is my team has developed a certification course to certify people as technology economists. And why is that important? You have plenty going on in IT finance. It's not to knock those functions because you need that for the company's book of record and book of business. But to manage your projects and manage your investments and manage your run costs, you have to have technology economists that look at the relationship between input and outcome. And
Mm.
that's the difference between those couple of fields. So I'm sorry to bring up so many different things at once.
No,
And
that's fine. Because one of the things that it relates to, when you're talking about the technology economics, that it's a field that is gaining in power, but still not enough of it. And when you really start to make these decisions, when we do our state of TBM and other survey vehicles, you're still seeing too much of focus on transparency or actual budgets and forecasting rather
right.
than getting to value. Part of the challenge of getting to value and part of the change that people need to make is, that economics view, but getting that to your CFO and your business leaders, whether it's a COO or a CEO. Once you bring that holy trinity, business, finance, and technology, that's when you can start to get that holistic view of value because you have the full cost, you have a better view of the full value,
Yeah.
and then you're having those discussions around which ones are giving us the outcomes that we need. So I do think that it is an evolving skill set that we're going to see in the leadership around technology economics. I think the business economics are usually there, but you need to add the technology side to that.
Yeah, and actually, one of the things that I'm going to share with the TBM Council, maybe they want to put out, is we have a very simple questionnaire which you can rate yourself, or you're a victim or the master of your technology economics, and that has to do with all the things that Matt just talked about. And even at a higher level, and this just bumps this up once, just something to think about. When you look at world economics and the technology economics is the third largest economy, where does that fit? I don't know if most people know that things like the GDP were put in operation in 1934. The other things that are just the consumer price index came out of World War I to show what's happening to the cost of goods. And even if you look at the markets every day, if you look at the average age of the Dow Jones, the S&P, the Russell 2000, and these other indicators, the average age of that stuff is 76.5 years. They were developed before there was a technology economy. So this is not to make you feel bad about your company, but if you haven't mastered all this, the markets don't even have indicators of this stuff, except to check the Magnificent Seven, which is a bunch of very different food groups and how they behave every day based on the whims of the markets. Is that getting me in trouble, man? Right.
Absolutely. All right. So to bring this one to a close, a couple key points here as we start to look at this is, you really need to have that more expansive view of where your value is coming from, where the costs are. It's going to sit wider than just that technology bucket. And then to really get to it and have this more holistic picture, you really need to start thinking about the idea of technology economy. So this is something that Howard's company and TBM are going to continue to explore. We're going to help get people educated around it. So you can visit our websites to get info on it. When we come back the next time, one of the things I do want to investigate with Howard is people are starting to talk about different measures of how you're going to measure output from the AI side of things. And there's some interesting things out there with GNI and GDI and things like that. Howard's got some real insights because he's been one of the leaders behind it, but we'll come back and talk to that. So Howard, any closing thoughts from your side?
Yeah, I would say the subject of outcome, an exciting thing to do. Maybe it's not so exciting to most people. Just look at your annual report and see where the key outcome measures in the company they're talking about shareholders. They're not talking about the connections with IT. But if you're a public company, what are you telling your shareholders? What are you promising? And what role does technology have to play? That will give you some insight into the key outcome measures that your company communicates out to the street. So I think that's a key thing to look at. So anyway, thank you for involving me, Matt. It was a pleasure.
Excellent. It's great seeing you, Howard. Everybody, if you get a chance, give us a like on YouTube when you listen to the podcast. But otherwise, we'll see you in a few days to talk a little bit more about where AI is going and how you measure it. Thank you, everybody. Bye now.
Bye bye.